If Mitt Romney can be pushed around, intimidated, coerced, co-opted by a conservative radio talk show host in middle America, then how is he going to stand up to the Chinese?
Okay, this is as good as it gets. That is right-winger Brian Fisher, the man who forced the Romney campaign last week to drop openly gay campaign staffer Richard Grinnell. And which conservative radio talk show host do you think he is talking about? Which one was Romney so afraid of? No, not this guy. And no, not that guy. No, the conservative radio talk show host that Brian Fisher is talking about, the one who Mitt Romney is so afraid of, is none other than Brian Fisher himself.
How is he going to stand up to Putin? How is he going to stand up to North Korea if he can be pushed around by a yokel like me? I mean, I don't think Romney's realizing kind of the doubts that this begins to raise about his leadership.
Now Brian Fisher is criticizing Romney for abandoning his principles and caving to Brian Fisher over having a gay staff member in his campaign.
I don't think for 1 minute that Mitt Romney did not want this guy gone. He wanted this guy gone because there was not one word of defense, not a peep from the Romney camp to defend him. They just went absolutely stone cold silent. They put a bag over Grinnell's head. They even asked him to organize this phone conference, and they didn't even let him speak at the conference that he organized.
Joining me now, editor-in-chief of thenationalmemo.com, Joe Conason, and former DNC communications director and current MSNBC political analyst Karen Finney. Joe, so it turns out Brian Fisher is only half crazy.
Seems that way. He's right.
Because he's right tonight.
He's right for the wrong reason. He's suggesting that Mitt Romney is too weak to be leading our diplomacy, really, which is what this is about, just as the China incident last week showed the same thing when he, peeped up about that in the middle of negotiations over the fate of Chen Guangcheng. Now he's gotten rid of somebody who he thought was qualified to be his foreign policy spokesman, a very sensitive position, because of this yahoo who says, why is he listening? Brian Fisher called himself a yokel in that clip.
He did.
And
it's not a word that I use on the show.
You and I wouldn't say that, but since he said it, it's
self-described
yokel.
It's
not a self-described yokel. Would you listen to a self-described yokel tell you, get rid of my foreign policy spokesman? I mean, you look at the people who are the spokespeople in the State Department for years, under President Clinton, under President Reagan, under both Presidents Bush. Serious, important job. It's not a joke. And for Mitt Romney to get rid of a guy after a few days, just because, which you have to assume it took him a while to pick this person, and he gets rid of him after a few days because a yokel tells him this guy's got to go because he's gay? This harkens back to a time in our diplomatic service, which was a very dark period, when people were kicked out because of various kinds of prejudice. And our diplomacy, our intelligence services, our military all suffered from that. We don't need to go back to that under Mitt Romney.
And Karen, the point he's making, that Fisher's making, is, hey, if you can't stand up to me, who can you stand up to? I mean, that is a really valid point.
Of course it is, and it's lovely for him to make that point for us, don't you think? I mean, that is
no one can make it better than he can make it, it turns out.
Particularly, I have to say, one thing you and Joe left out is the fact that I love that he talks about himself as a yokel in the third person. I mean, you just can't pay for that kind of stuff. But, look, this is similar to what many of us said about Rush Limbaugh, right? In that if they can't stand up to Rush Limbaugh, if they're so scared to stand up to Rush Limbaugh, how are they going to take on Iran? They think they're going to go bomb Iran, but they can't stand up to Limbaugh, and I guess they can't stand up to this self-proclaimed yokel. I mean, on a serious note, remember that this same so-called yokel was saying last week, hey, this shows that we've got control of this guy. This shows that when this guy steps out of line, we can whip him right back in line. And I think that is really at the heart of the matter in terms of you can't trust Mitt Romney he's going to be so beholden to so many different forces on the right wing that this is what's going to happen. This is what a Romney presidency would look like.
And let's just remember Mitt Romney's words when he wouldn't stand up to Limbaugh, when Limbaugh was calling Sandra Fluke a prostitute and a slut and all of that. Mitt Romney, who has no daughters himself, couldn't bring himself to say anything more than, I'll just say this, it's not the language I would have used. Right. I mean, that's who. And now let's go to Ohio today. In Ohio today, he was faced with a woman who said President Obama is guilty of treason. Let's see how he handled that.
The microphone right behind you.
We have a president right now that is operating outside the structure of our Constitution, and yeah, I do agree he should be tried for treason.
She then went into a long thing that turned out to be a constitutional question, and here is Mitt Romney's response.
Well, as I'm sure you do, I happen to believe that the Constitution was not just brilliant, but probably inspired. I believe the same thing about the Declaration of Independence.
So Mitt Romney never says a word, not one word, about this woman saying Obama should be tried for treason, unlike John McCain, who in his turn last time around, when faced with, these crazy accusations, he actually stood up to some people.
Well, that's an important contrast. John McCain, for all his conservatism, for all his crankiness, actually, during that campaign towards Obama, who he didn't enjoy running against, nevertheless is somebody who has principles that he's willing to speak out for and is not afraid of a crowd of right-wing yahoos. This guy is.
Karen,
and he showed it over and over again.
Let's listen to what Romney said when a reporter asked him, why didn't you answer her, say something to her about the president being tried for treason? Let's listen to that.
Is there a reason you didn't correct her or say that you wouldn't?
I answered the question.
Okay, but you don't agree with her answer?
I don't correct all the questions that get asked of me. I obviously don't agree that he should be tried.
Karen, he doesn't correct those questioners.
No, that's not his job. He's just trying to close the deal, Lawrence. Come on. Look, one of the most core tenets of leadership is the ability to understand the importance of what's happening while it's happening. And by that I mean a true leader would have understood that the need to stop that part of the question and say, I don't agree with that, and then go on to the rest of the question in the same way that, as you mentioned, John McCain did during the last cycle when a woman was talking about, President Obama being a Muslim. I mean, that is, for all of the attacks they make on Obama and his leadership, I mean, this is a real failure of Romney's leadership. And I just want to go back real quickly on the Sandra Fluke point. He doesn't have daughters, but he has 5 daughters-in-law. He has granddaughters. So certainly from a very personal place and a personal perspective, he could have stood up for women and girls without it even being seen as politically motivated, and he didn't do that either.
It's his fear of saying anything to that woman about the treason thing. It reminds me of the Don Draper scenes in Mad Men when he gets very mad at anyone in one of those corporate meetings who says something additional that was unnecessary to say to the client. We could go on and on with this. Joe Conason and Karen Finney, thank you both very much for joining me tonight. Thanks. Coming up, Melissa Harris Perry reviews Michelle Obama's star turn on the campaign trail Saturday in Ohio. And you'll hear a North Carolina pastor. No, you won't hear him. You will be riveted by a North Carolina pastor who preaches against the amendment on the North Carolina ballot tomorrow to ban same-sex marriage. That's coming up.